Good morning, good afternoon now, right? My name is Amanda Credor. I am the Business Development Manager at Xplore Federal Credit Union, and this is part of our free virtual town hall series for the community, bringing some of our community partners out into our community to see what you guys do. So I am here today with CASA Jefferson, with Rosanna and Margaret. And I just want to start with introductions of both of you. So whoever wants to go first, let's do name, your position with CASA, what you do, and we'll jump into that second question after intros, maybe how long you've been with CASA as well.
Okay. Well, I'll start. My name is Rosanna Gonzalez. I'm the Executive Director for CASA Jefferson. And what else did you ask? How long I've been with CASA, or what was it?
Yes.
Okay. I started with CASA in 2008 and in a different position. And in 2014, yes, 2014, I was granted the opportunity to be the Executive Director for CASA and lead the organization. So I've been here with CASA since 2008.
Oh, that is awesome. Congratulations.
Hello, Hello everyone. My name is Margaret Ether. I'm the advocate recruiter for CASA Jefferson. I've been with CASA Jefferson for 6 years. I love my job, and I'm always trying to get people to volunteer. So as a recruiter, I'm on the job 24/7.
I love it. I love it. So we'll go back to Rosanna. What do you do for CASA, with CASA, and what are some of the things that you love, and maybe what a day-to-day kind of looks like, or week to week, because I'm sure it changes.
Yeah, and I mean, as a nonprofit, you're constantly wearing multiple hats. So you definitely do. What I do today might be different than what I do tomorrow. It varies a lot. Part of what I do on a daily basis, or on a week-to-week basis, if you want to call it, is, you know, I see myself as the leader organization, but at the same time as a support to everybody else. You know, my position is to foresee and see where the organization is going to in the future, you know, to manage the funds that we get. We are a nonprofit. I apologize. You hear the baby in the background crying. You know, we're a nonprofit. Our number one goal is to serve children. And so part of my position is to, you know, evaluate how many children are we serving, you know, to support our advocate coordinators and their volunteers by brainstorming in difficult situations on cases, you know, working with Miss Margaret, with our trainer, to ensure that all of our policies and procedures are, you know, being followed. Most importantly, as an overall thinker, I think is what I like to call it, of all the different things that we have going on. You know, our main focus is children. Our main focus is the advocacy for these kids and supporting our volunteers, you know, but we have the recruitment, we have the training aspect of it. And then we have a couple of, you know, children's projects, as we call them, to make sure that, you know, outside of the advocacy, outside of the quality of, you know, testimony that our advocates give in court, you know, how else can we make a child's life, you know, better,
right,
for a little while, and that includes some of our children's projects.
Yeah, and so you're involved in all of those things, right? So you encompass all of that.
I love it, and I love it, and I really do. You know, you asked the question, you know, what do I like about being with CASA? And I started supervising volunteers in 2008. And before that, I had never heard about CASA in my life. I didn't know what CASA was. But I was introduced to it by a former employee of another nonprofit I was working for. And, you know, I've always had a passion for justice, and for volunteers, and for knowing that our volunteers make a difference, and they do honestly make a difference in the life of children. I've always been a big advocate for change in the legal system. Growing up, in previous jobs, I worked with volunteers who worked with adults who didn't know how to read and write. It was a literacy program. And that really opened up my eyes to the power of what a volunteer can do in the life of an adult. So when I heard about CASA, it was like, wow, you know, these are volunteers from the community making a difference in the life of a child who's been abused and neglected. But it's not just, I'm going to go hug you, or I'm going to be with you, I'm going to follow you through this time. It's, I have the ability to give a voice for you in the court system, a voice where, you know, sometimes or in the past, you know, children are easily dismissed, or, you know, a legal system is very confusing, even for an adult, you know, and a child's wishes or their rights or the best interest for them can easily be lost in between
Right.
a legal system, in between
Right.
a court system that, you know, you have parents and you have all these other things. And to see that a community volunteer can come through CASA, can get trained, can be that support system for a child during a very difficult time in their lives. And on top of that, can give recommendations to a judge for what's in their best interest, and real recommendations that really will make a difference. You know, that is what was so amazing to me, that made me say, wow, I want to be a part of that. I want to work in an organization where I can see that change is being made, that I can see that children really have a voice in court, and that their life changes, you know, that they don't go
Right.
back to abusive situations, that they have everything that they need in all of the environments that they live in while they're in foster care. So
Right.
it's really about seeing true change. You know, I've been a tutor at school, and it's great to be a volunteer tutor, but you only see the child for that little tiny bit. You know, volunteered at the church as well. I've, you know, taught, you know, catechism. You only see the child for that little tiny bit. With CASA, you see them for a lot more than that. You see them
Right.
throughout a very difficult time in their life. So that is what gives me the passion to do what I do. Even in the position that I'm in now, I don't get to go out and work with kids as much as I did back in 2008, but knowing that we're still able to work with children, and through Miss Margaret and the other staff, you know, we're able to still provide a voice for children. And that's what makes CASA to me unique and special.
Awesome. What about you, Miss Margaret? So what do you do, and what does that encompass, and what does your day-to-day look like in your involvement with CASA?
Well, my day-to-day is really talking and mingling and being out there in the community, letting people know what CASA is, why we're there, and what we do in the community. What was really amazing to me when I started at CASA, I learned about CASA through America Vista because I was assigned to a CASA in another area, and then coming to CASA Jefferson and learning that a lot of people in Metairie didn't know anything about CASA. So my job was huge because I had to make sure I was out there in community events and community activities, and just passing information, flyers, and talking to people about CASA and letting them know that CASA is valuable in your community and that we need you to help with children. And a lot of people didn't know the magnitude of abuse and neglect that was going on in their own community with children. And to be that force that could be out there and say, hey, look, take this information, and I'm sharing this with you because I need you to understand that we need volunteers to help us with our children. And a lot of people look at me like, well, what is that? I've never heard of that. And that was a wide awakening for me. It was a light bulb that went off that, you know what, as a recruiter, sitting in the office is not where it's at. You got to be out there in the community. I'm everywhere. I'm all over the place. And people said, oh, I just saw you on TV, and I just saw you at the market. And yeah, because I need you to understand that CASA needs people to help us with our children. Well, what is a volunteer? A volunteer is that person that's the eyes and ears and voice for a child that's been taken from their parents due to abuse and neglect. And you can be a voice for a child. A baby can't talk. So if you
Right.
got a baby, once you go through the training, we do a complete background check. We have to make sure that all those individuals that say, hey, I can do this, that you are cleared through the juvenile court system, through the legal system, that you can do this. Because a lot of people who say, I can, I will, I won't, I will do this, but can't pass a background check. And I've learned that, as open as I am, as honest as I am, when I say we do a complete background check, people tend to back away. And in doing orientation is where you sit with me and we talk about all the particulars. I let people know that I need to make sure that you're not going to put our children back into harm's way. So we need your fingerprints. We need to run you through the databases. We need to make sure that children who have been taken from bad situations are not put back in bad situations because you want to volunteer to help them. And the world has changed. So, you know, I love what I do. I meet a lot of people, a lot of personalities, a lot of nationalities, ethnic backgrounds, that I have to break stuff down and say, hey, look, children need people who can help them as well as has already helped themselves.
Right. So what exactly is CASA? Since you're out in the community talking about it a lot, I'll throw that question to you. So in as much of a nutshell as you can, you know, being court appointed special advocacy program, what exactly is CASA? And then we'll segue that right into some questions about CASA itself. But what exactly is it? What do you guys do?
Well, CASA, as you said, are court-appointed special advocates for children in foster care. And one thing I bring to everybody's mind that come to the table and talk to me, you don't put children in your car, you don't bring them to your house, you don't take care of them. CASAs are persons that make sure that all of a child's special needs are being met while in foster care. So people say, well, why do you want to send somebody into a foster home to make sure children are okay? Over the years that I've been doing this, children are put back into harm's way while in foster care. The judge from Seattle that started CASA, he wanted neutral persons involved with CASA to make sure that children were not harmed while in foster care, that children got everything that they need. They were in a safe, clean, comfortable environment, comfortable home, beds to sleep in, proper clothes, decent meals. So advocates make sure these things are taking place. You make sure with COVID, home visits came to a halt, but we did Zoom visits, we did Skype visits, we did yard visits. You know, we had to make sure that children who were in foster care were not being mistreated during COVID. So advocate coordinators, everybody that comes through the program, do a background check. After you finish the program through Ms. Wanda, who's the trainer, who was an advocate herself, so was I. We know what's going on. So once you finish the program, sworn in by the judge, you're assigned to somebody to walk with you through the process of you helping our children. You're not thrown away. A lot of people look at me with this question mark kind of face, like they'd have to do this by themselves. I had orientation on yesterday, Amanda, and a lady said, well, I said, let me break it down. You don't walk this by yourself. There's somebody that coaches you, somebody that's in court with you. You learn to do things through the training that we as regular adults don't get to do. You're on a different side of the juvenile justice system from where you stand today. An advocate becomes an intricate part of the system and a better intricate part of a child's life, because here you are, quote, responsible to make sure the child is not put back into harm's way. So CASA advocates and volunteers are vitally important for children's lives.
And so going back to Rosanna, so what type of organization, because we've mentioned you work in the juvenile court system, that you have volunteers, that you're in Jefferson. So what type of organization is it? Government, nonprofit, and how does that kind of function?
So we are a nonprofit organization. Previously, we were a court-based program. We were one of the last court-based programs in the state of Louisiana. But in 2013, we transitioned to a nonprofit. As a nonprofit, we are funded mostly about 60–70% of our organization is funded through federal grants. And although we are a nonprofit organization, our purpose is to serve the courts. That's why it's court-appointed special advocates. Our purpose is to be the eyes and the ears of the judges who cannot leave the bench and go themselves into these foster homes to see how their children are doing. They cannot leave the bench and go talk directly to the therapists who are working with the children, to talk to doctors, to go to the schools and make sure that our kids have the services they need and that they're not just one other number, a student number. Our judges can't do that. They just don't have the capacity to do that. So as Ms. Margaret said, this program started back in the 60s in Seattle, Washington, with Judge Sukup, who really felt as though he was listening to child abuse, hearings. They're called child in need of care cases. And he was listening to them and trying to figure out what was best for children, but, everybody has an agenda when they're coming in or has a role to play. Let's say that, you have the social workers who are there to, talk about the entire family and provide services for all the family, mom, dad, and however many children there are. You have their attorneys who are there to make sure that the state is within, federal law and state law. And then you have attorneys for the parents who are there to speak up on behalf of their wishes. And then you have a child attorney also who is there to speak up for the child's rights and the child's wishes. But he didn't really have someone there neutral to talk about really what's going on with the child, because everybody had their hands full with parents, with the states, with the entire family. And so children as a whole were being just, slightly introduced at these hearings, and a little bit was going on. And, social worker didn't have enough time to touch base on every child because they had, 20 cases, and each case is, at least 4 to 5 people, and it was a lot. So that's why he came up with this idea of having neutral parties come in, being trained, being, specifically trained to look for things that as a parent you would look for, honestly. As a parent for my children, I am their natural advocate. If I'm in a good state, my responsibility as a parent is to make sure that they're okay, right? To look after them, to look, school, make sure everything's going on in school correctly. If, they have any medical issues that they're taking care of, right? And the parents that have abused and neglected their own children, sometimes because of mental health, sometimes because addiction, sometimes because of, family cycles of abuse that they've been themselves, they cannot be that natural advocate for their children, right? They cannot. Sometimes they cannot. And so that's what causes children to come into care because of their addiction. They've neglected their children or they abused their children. And so those advocates are there. They're there to be those individual people to really step up. And that's why we serve the court. You can't just walk in the court and say, hey, I want to, speak up for this child. You have to go through the process. You have to be background checked. You have to be sworn in by a judge because these are closed proceedings. They're confidential proceedings. These are real children that we work with, and they need a voice,
Right.
To give you an example, just real quick, I know what's been in the news lately of the family and the child in, Texas, of the child that, was found to be dead, living in the home with their 2 brothers, brother and sister, I think it was, or the 2 siblings in the home for over a year by themselves. So you have 2 children, an older one taking care of the younger one. You have the body of their younger sibling that had been dead for over a year in their own home, and their parents only coming a couple of times a month to give them food. Those are the situations that are happening. And I know this is, a news in Houston, but, similar situations like that have happened in Jefferson Parish. They happen in our backyard. They happen in the entire state of Louisiana. We have over 4,000 children in foster care in the entire state of Louisiana. So it is really needed to be part of this nonprofit that really, is able to provide recommendations to a judge as to what children need. With our ultimate goal is children need to be in safe and permanent homes. They do not need to be raised in foster care. We do not want children raised in foster care. They deserve to have a family, preferably their biological family. We do work with families. The court wants to make sure that families get the rehab they need, get the help they need to be better families and to provide safe homes for their children. That is the #1 goal. If I was going through something like that with depression or, some kind of addiction, I would love to get the help that I need to be the better parent for my children. When that is not a possibility, because there are many situations where reunification with family is not a possibility, as CASAs, we recommend an alternative, and we work with the system, and we work with social workers and everybody to make sure that an alternative option for children, whether it be adoption, whether it be custody to a relative, or custody adoption by a foster parent, is the best option for that child, because we don't want children in foster care. They shouldn't be raised by a system. They should be raised by families.
Right, and that advocate that you've mentioned, and that was Margaret was saying, for some of the volunteers, that advocate that can go into the court system, double check on the home, and then also come in and say, okay, the alternative, this is what I've seen, right, and provide that voice for the child.
Absolutely.
That is such a special volunteer that I do want to get into in a minute, but for people who can't necessarily give that amount of time, what other ways do you guys need help within the community if someone can't, maybe it is pass the background check, or if it's just not comfortable in court system? What other ways can people volunteer with CASA?
Absolutely. So, no, absolutely. Of course, fundraising is always, the big part, helping us fundraising, getting involved. We have a wine tasting event coming up in 2 weeks, November 11th. Participating in that, we have a committee that puts that on. In any of the fundraisers that we have, of course, as a nonprofit, and like I mentioned, about 60% of our budget is through federal grants. And we know that federal grants are they're not guaranteed that every year they're going to be, renewed. Thankfully, they have been for at least as long as I've been with CASA. They have been renewed. But that is a big need, for the community, from the community to us, is to help us with, not being as dependent on federal grants. Now, in addition to that, we do have children's projects. Like I said, my hat is I wear different hats, and my hand isn't empty. So we do 3 major projects for children. And these projects come from the thought that children should have, quote, normal things that every child has when they are at home, when they're not in foster care. One of those is birthdays, right?
Yes.
Several years ago, we started serving some children, and children started saying, like, I've never had a birthday in my life. I've never blown out a cake. My mom has never been around. My dad, neither. And so a board member of ours a few years back developed a project called Candace of Hope. And this project reaches out to the community and different people who've been involved, and they provide a cake for our kids. And we're able to deliver, the volunteers able to deliver a cake for the kid on their birthday, to make sure that they have a cake, they have a candle to blow out, to give them hope while they're in foster care. So that's one project we have. We also have a back to school supply drive that we run every summer, and that's called Chalk It Up for Kids. And that we've also been running, maybe I want to say since 2007 we've been doing that. Yes. Project. And that really makes sure that every child in foster care that's involved with our program has a brand new backpack, has all of their school supplies needed, when they go to school, so they don't have to worry about whether or not they're going to have what they need because they've moved from foster home to foster home, or because they just came into foster care last week and school starts this week. Like, it doesn't matter. We want to make sure we have those supplies for them. And then a Christmas toy drive. So yes. The holidays, we know are difficult for our kids, because who wants to spend Christmas in foster care, right? I don't think anybody would ever want to spend Christmas in a foster home. And our foster parents are great. We have foster parents that are awesome. They really are, but it's just not the same. It's not the same being with family, especially you know, when it's the only family you have, even if you come from a neglectful, abusive home, that is the only home you've had. That is the only thing you've known. So during the holidays, we throw a party for kids, a very nice, very fun party. The last 2 years due to COVID, well, at least last year, due to COVID, we weren't able to provide the party. This year we won't be able to do it either. It's a little late to try to put it together, although we're doing a little better with COVID numbers in our community. But the purpose of the party is really to give children an outing, to give children the opportunity to take their minds off of, why am I in foster care during Christmas? Or, you know, why am I in foster care and my siblings are in another home and I'm over here and I can't spend time with them? So it is definitely an outing for them to come together and enjoy the food, enjoy the activities, the different themes we have. Every year it's a different theme. We've had from Cat in the Hat to Snoopy to Lion King. I mean, all kind of different. Our staff are really cool. They get very creative when it comes to those parties.
Yes, we do.
And so they come. They have the opportunity, like I said, to visit with their siblings. And sometimes they are in separate homes, and you know, they come out and they're able to visit with them, and then they go home with toys, because of our wonderful community has gone together and really made amazing donations to our program. And so kids have toys that they look forward to, that they can open, during Christmas, right? So yeah, it's getting involved.
Parties, though, you guys are still bringing in. So, because I know last year, that's part of the program. That's one thing that Xplore was able to partner with last year, was making sure, I love the list too that we get for those, you know, that every list that we had for those families, you have a need and a want and a book. And it was just wonderful that you're providing them with multiple items, not just, okay, well, here's a toy for a 2-year-old. You know, it's very personalized. You guys put a lot of work into that. And I know that not only are you paying attention, but we received, you know, we had advocates reach back out to us and say, you know, the kids just don't even know where to say thank you. You know, everything fit, everything was wonderful, or they got what they needed. And one thing I want to mention is sometimes they are in separate homes. And we actually had received one list with one of the wants was that his sibling, who was younger, would receive something specifically, and he specifically listed on there what she wanted. And it's just it's so different, I think, for people to really realize what these kids have been through at this point, that something can be so important, from a coat to, I really hope that my sister gets this book, you know, send this with her in a separate space.
And that's how the community can get involved, you know, is by looking at those and saying, wow, you know, if I can make this sibling smile knowing that her sister got this, you know, or his or her sibling got this, you know, I think is the way the community can get involved, you know, by helping do those toy drives, or, you know, if you're willing to pass a background check and do the background, you can come and volunteer the day of the party. Hopefully next year we can resume parties, you know. You can come and be a part of that, but you do have to go through the background checks and sign the confidentialities of it. You know, we've had volunteers in the past come into our office and help us sort the toys and help us wrap them up, you know, and put them in bags and just get ready for the event. You know, so those are ways that the community can get involved, through the holiday toy drive, through you know, donating for school supply drive. I do want to say that if we do get sometimes we get very generous amount of toys for the holidays. Extra toys that are left are kept in our office, and they become part of our birthday closets. And so the kids not only get a cake, but their advocate is able to come into the office and pick out a gift for them as well. For our older teens, which is really hard, you know, we get gift cards, and so we have gift cards available for them to say, hey, here's $20, here's $30 to Target, go buy yourself something, you know, let your foster mom take you to buy you something. So those are ways that volunteers can get involved, in addition to helping with fundraising as well.
So let's get into the actual volunteer, because I think people are going to at this point have questions about I'm sure Ms. Margaret, you talk about this all the time. Not only what it takes to be volunteer with the background check you've mentioned, but maybe the amount of hours they can kind of guesstimate they would have to ask their employer for, or what would be they would be responsible for. What is that actual advocate volunteer that we've talked about?
Well, the time that we're talking about is what's required is 1 or 2 home visits per month, 1 or 2 phone calls per month. It's keeping check on that child. Let me add this. A lot of volunteers think they have to go into their pocket to provide. CASA was not designed to go in your pocket. Your money is your money. This is why we have the toy closet at the office. This is why we have Christmas. This is why we have school supply drive. This is why we provide birthday cakes and cards, because we don't need advocates to think that they have to go in their pocket for their money to help our children. Because if you tell somebody you got to buy this and spend this, then you're pushing them away to volunteer. So this is why whenever we do orientation, I take them around to the toy closet and I explain to them, it's not designed to interfere with your lifestyle. Court is always scheduled unless a teenage child run away, then you have emergency court. Court is every 3 to 6 months. It's always scheduled. I tell advocates that nothing is a surprise. So as what we know, you will get contact. This is why you have an advocate coordinator there with you. You sit down and discuss your monthly visits. You talk about your phone calls. You have that person with you to help you learn how to facilitate with your child. You're not left alone. And training, even though we have training used to be where we had court observation. In Ms. Wanda's training, she has a mock court where you can't be in court, but you can visualize what it's like to be in court when these proceedings are going on. I always tell advocates, be mindful that the child really is somewhat your responsibility when you become an advocate. You have to make sure that all of that child's basic needs are being met. But that responsibility doesn't mean you got to make sure they have clothes. If a child needs clothes, an advocacy, or a child needs uniforms, a child needs clothes, let your advocate coordinator know we have resources to get what children need. So that's why it's not designed to infringe on your financial status at all. And a lot of people are shocked when I say that. If you work for your money and a child is dependent on you, that's not your child, it poses a problem. So we have resources to provide for advocates to help children where you don't go into your pocket. Did that answer your question?
You did. I think the only thing is some people, I think, are concerned about being able to either take off of work or I'm only available on weekends. That's the only thing I think I hear sometimes too, that you might be able to speak to.
And I think that's very valid. You know, we are a volunteer-based organization, and 80% of our volunteers are employed full-time. And Miss Margaret said, you are given about a 6-month window of when you come to court. We are able to provide subpoenas for your employers if you need, to show that you really are coming to court and, to help you be excused. Advocates are required on a monthly basis to meet with that child, to meet them in person, to see them. And that could be done at your schedule. And we just ask that you're flexible enough to also work with the schedule of the foster parents. Some foster parents have multiple children. They may have 3 to 4 kids, and each kid has different visitations with their parents. They have therapy sessions. They have just normal activities, like our children may have extracurricular activities outside of school. So it's really a matter of, working with the foster parent to ensure that there is a set time that you going out and you're visiting our children. It is extremely important that you see them every month. Children look for a volunteer's face because many times the volunteer is the only person in their life that's consistent. What does that mean? That means that maybe the 7-year-old that came into foster care 2 months ago might have had already 2 different foster homes. And that means a change in school, that means a change in friends, that means a change in foster parent, obviously. It means a change in environment. And for them to know that their CASA volunteer is going to follow them where they go and make sure that they have a familiar face, it's important. So they're required to see the children once a month. We ask that you call on a weekly basis, just to, a simple 5-6 minute call. Just, how are you doing? How was this week? How is school? Again, it's being that consistent person, and that you see them every 30 days, once a month, and then that you come to court. As staff, we're here to support you, and we're here to be that backbone that you need, because it's a very complicated system. Even though we want to say it's really easy, it's not. Foster care and the federal law gives parents, anywhere between 15 to 21 months to really change their life, and that's a long time. So you're talking about a year and a half. For a 3-year-old, for example, that's half of their lifetime, right, in foster care. And so we do ask you to come to court, because you are that voice for that child, whether that child is 3 or whether that child is 17, because we work with everybody from birth to age 18, and now beyond 18 if they choose to stay in foster care. But you're that child's voice. And so seeing them throughout, their placements, throughout their time in foster care, coming to court every 6 months. Like I said, when you come to court, you come and you testify, you give your recommendations, and before you leave, you get a little slip to say, okay, this is, we're in October, so you're going to come back in March, for example, of next year. So here's the date, and here's the time, and here's, what we expect for you, to come and be prepared for. And during that time, our staff works with you, our staff helps you, our staff explains to you what's going on. We do the whole, devil's advocate, what if this, what if that, all these different ways of thinking about what a child's need. You might be going every other month or maybe once a quarter to the school to get, school records. You might be going every, it just depends. Each case is so different that it depends, but you definitely encourage, if you could, to attend school meetings, to attend staffings with social workers. You're encouraged, if you could, even to go to doctor appointments if you have, the ability. We have children who have kidney issues, who need a transplant of different things, who have been very medically neglected. And sometimes the only person that really knows what's going on and can get all the medical records is the advocate, because the social worker can't. She literally can't. Not that she doesn't want to or he doesn't want to. It's like their time is so stretched that they can't. So that volunteer sometimes is the only person, hey, I was able to get the records here. This is really what's going on medically with this child, So, the ideal is once a month, visit with their children, meeting with their advocate coordinator, which is the staff member, to kind of help them, figure out what's going on and be that sounding board also, and then coming to court roughly every 6 months. Sometimes you come, or the judge will set a hearing before then, but you're not required to attend those hearings unless you can. You really just required to come to court every 6 months. And then the visitations, like I said, are really, we try to work with the volunteer schedule and the foster parent schedule. A lot of our visitations are done after hours because, like I said, 80% of our advocates work full time, and we completely understand that. So,
well, and kids go to school, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
At the same time.
Yeah. Well, and pre-COVID, we say that we were able to go into the schools and visit them at school too. Sometimes, during like the recess and different things. So there's different ways to work that, and I'm really hopeful that soon we'll be able to get back to being able to do some of those visits as well during the day.
And not every child gets an advocate. So that I do know, and I don't want to go into that too much, but just so people that are listening know that not every child, because again, it's court appointed by a judge. So not every child gets an advocate. So when a child does get an advocate, there's a reason the judge said, I need help watching this child. So for those that are listening in and kind of want to ask more about that, that would be the reasoning behind it. And that's where the amount of time comes in at and what that child particularly would need. But as we're kind of closing in on the time, I did want to get to what's coming down the pike. Either one of you want to talk about, you said you have an event, a fundraising event coming up on November 11th. So I do want to get to that. And then the final question after that.
Yeah. So we have our event that's been postponed, I don't know how many times because of COVID. This is our first in-person event that we're having since the pandemic started, and we're really excited. It is our 3rd annual wine tasting event. We did do the wine tasting last year. It was virtual. It was a challenge, but it was good. So this year we're back to in-person. It is November 11th at Fulton Alley, Bowling Alley. Tickets are $100, which is, really feasible. We have wines featured by Grand Cru and Buccaneer. And then we're going to have some a jazz trio. We have some, bites, of course, and it's in a silent auction as well. And all the benefits from this event really go towards, making sure that we have the funds to continue to, recruit, train, and support volunteers to make a difference in the life of a child. You can find information about the wine tasting event coming up at our Facebook page. We have an event there, and feel free to call us or email me, Ari Gonzalez at CASAJefferson.org, or just call our office and ask. We have, like I said, tickets are available now, and we have some really cool packages in the silent auction that are good travel packages. So for those of us who are ready for a different environment for a little bit, now that everything is opening back up a lot more and it's a little safer, there are some really cool travel packages that are in our auction. So
what time is the event?
6 to 8 p.m.
Perfect. Awesome. I'm excited. I'm excited for it. Margaret, what do you see coming in for the future? I know the pandemic's not over, but pandemic changed things. Now we're starting to see things adjusting with, mask mandate being removed. But what do you see within or outside of the kind of the COVID changes? What's coming for the next year or 5 years for CASA?
Well, as far as recruitment, I'm learning to be more and more, like I said, out in the public, because I'm at the Lafreniere Wednesday market, farmers market. I'm going to be at the Tuesday market in Old Metairie. There are markets for fresh fruits and everything coming up all over. Anywhere that I can get out there, I will, because here again, that's promotion for CASA. That's putting CASA out there in the public and letting people know the need for volunteers. As time goes on, we'll just be more visual. That's important, to be visual and to, promote the fact that children do need help. There's a need for volunteers. As our numbers go up, as slowly, because the court system have changed with a lot of structure with how children are being kept in foster care or kept at home, that there's a need for children to be safe and in safe environments. So recruitment, as always, is out there. I know next year I'll be putting my signs back out. The Jefferson Parish has allowed me the opportunity to put my signs throughout Jefferson, East and West Bank of Jefferson Parish. They will be out first thing come January. It's here again, it's more announcement for CASA and let people know that we're still here and we're still working with children and we still need help.
Amanda, if I can, I know we're running out of time real quick.
No, you have plenty of time. So what do you see for future? Same question.
So, we are not serving 100% of our children in that have been appointed to our program. We have a number of kids on our wait list. And so that number, we bring the wait list down, and then, something happens and it brings a couple more children in. So that's something that I would like to be able to say, 100% of the children appointed to our program are served by our volunteers. I think that's something that I would really, like to say one day. I think the other part, and I neglected to talk about, is our community outreach and our community education program. So we have 2 staff members that are trained facilitators of a program called Darkness to Light. And Darkness to Light is a program that helps identify indicators of child sexual abuse. 1 in 10 children will be abused sexually in our lifetime, in their lifetime. So that's a pretty big number when it comes to children. I think it's 1 in 8, and 1 in 8 girls and 1 in 10 boys. So those of us watching, just count your, nephews or nieces, and then out of there, look at that, that's a pretty significant number. So I would like to see more community members trained in that, and we provide that free of charge to the community. It's an awesome training. It's a training that changed the way I parent, the way I looked at things, things I hadn't seen before or thought about before, as a new mom with, when my 12-year-old was born, it really changed the way I parented. And it really changed the way I looked at things and how I protected my children from child sexual abuse. And so that's one thing that I would really like to see an impact in our community of more people being trained, because it's a ripple effect. If I train one person, that person can make a difference, or talk about the training to another parent, and then it just kind of, becomes this huge chain of changers, of people looking out for our children. And it goes anywhere from how we keep kids safer in schools, at home, during, just activities as a whole. In the past, we've trained members from like the Kenner Parks and Recreation Department as to what are ways that when they have camps, they can keep children safe. Our advocates get trained on this every year. We have an annual training. So I think, we want to see an increase of volunteers, of community members, and this can be anybody, saying, hey, can you come to my church? Hey, can you come to my school? Hey, can you come to my PTA meeting? Or hey, can you come to, wherever you let us in, we want to be there, because we want to make sure that the community has these tools to keep children safe, to prevent further abuse by anybody.
Right. Well, and especially with what's coming out in the news, especially with the last 2 days. That's very, very important. I think people a lot of times ask, oh, well, how did that happen? Well, let's get some training out there, right? We'll let you know. We'll absolutely put in front of you that process. So I love that. So Darkness to Light, that process. If there's anything else you guys have to say in closing, I really appreciate the time.
Thank you for the opportunity. We really, we just really appreciate the opportunity of this platform that you're providing us, so that we can talk to, your employers about what CASA does. Like Ms. Margaret said, some people hear CASA and they don't know what it was, or some people hear CASA and they think, we're a house for, the Latino community, for example, just because the acronym translates to house. So this really gives us a very good avenue, to say, hey, the court appointed special advocates. And if you have a heart and you have that some time, and you have the willingness to work with us and go through the background checks and really make a difference in the life of a child, we welcome you. We welcome you to our office. We welcome you to get involved in any of the other projects or fundraisings that we talked about. We really are a community-based organization.
Yes, we are.
Without our community, without our volunteers, we can't serve children, because staff cannot be an advocate. It is the advocate who's the advocate, and we're here to support and to help our volunteers make the difference in the life of a child. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm glad that we actually heard about it. I've actually known 3 individuals that have been advocates, which is how I heard about it. And so I love that all 3 of them had completely different experiences, great experiences. But as you've mentioned, every case is completely different. And so all 3 of them
case is different,
completely different. But it was, how can I help? And they were going, oh, we need toys for Christmas and we have these programs. And I'm going, that's what I didn't know. And so I love the fact that some of us that maybe can't, go into court or concerns about timing, have this opportunity to help in other ways. So for Xplore Federal Credit Union, we absolutely love giving platform, but also for holidays, we will be there. Extra presents for birthdays sound great.
Thank you.
And then I will see you guys on the 11th as well. So
Right.
yeah, I'm excited for that.
And like
So
Amanda,
every
like
time
you
that we
said,
can do something.
every case is different, and I wish we had a little magical wand that we would walk in and everything is, exactly how we want it to be. In some situations it's not. And that's where also the support from our staff kicks in, like it is not a perfect system. It is definitely a broken system. And CASA grew from the deficiencies of the child welfare system. Absolutely. It is hard. It is not easy work. It is hard to see children be broken. It is hard to see children say they want to go home and they can't go home. It is hard to walk into court and not everything that you recommended got made an order of the court. It is really hard, but we don't give up. At the end of the day, we do not give up. It is not that child's fault that they got abused and they were neglected and they were put into foster care. It is not their fault. And we ask our volunteers to commit to that child. And making sure that they're committed to that child, and we will work with them and we'll work with the state as best as we can, but we're their voice, and we're there to be with them. So we encourage anybody, if you can be an advocate, get involved. If you can't be an advocate and you can help in other ways, absolutely, we welcome you either way. So
either way,
that's right. Well, thank you, ladies, so much. I appreciate what you do. I mean, being here, easy, but I appreciate what you do on a daily basis because I know it is not hard, but as they say, somebody's got to do it. And I am so glad that it's you because you know, and you are there for it. So thank you so much for being here. I greatly appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you both very soon at some of these events that are coming up and partnering even more, right? Absolutely. Yes. Thank you, ladies. Have a great day.
Good job.